Hey guys, Nina here, and welcome back to More Than Fiction. So, today we're going to be discussing the Book of Azrael by Amber v. Nicole. And it's a spoiler-free episode. I'm not going to be diving deep, okay? You don't have to worry about that. It's basically just a recommendation, like, should you read it type of a scenario. I'm gonna be talking about the positives and the negatives, but keep in mind that this is subjective, you know? Some of the things that I like about this book might be the exact reason why you might hate it, you know? And the other way around. So be ready for that. I'll probably be reading some quotes as well. Don't worry, nothing spoilery. Just to give you a vibe of the writing, of the mood, you know, of the vibes in the book, I guess. Also, you should probably know that I've read the first two books. So there are 3 books out right now. The 4th book in the series is coming on August 5th. So, you know, if you want to read it, maybe you should wait a little bit so that you can read all 4 books at once. You can binge read them. The author said, I think, that this book series is probably gonna consist of 7 books, which I think it's crazy. I did not know that before I started reading. And, you know, I usually like to read book series that are already finished, so this is gonna be a struggle to wait, but at the same time, I don't regret it because I needed something that hooked me, and this book series hooked me. So I guess that's the first insight you're getting into my opinion about it. It's called, by the way, the Gods and Monsters series, which is appropriate based on the storyline. However, this is kind of annoying because usually when I read longer series, I always name them just like the name of the first book and then I add the number 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, so this is like the Book of Azrael 1, the Book of Azrael 2. You know what I mean? It's the Book of Azrael series to me. So I actually kind of wish the authors would start naming the series based on the name of the first book, if I'm like, that makes sense. Also, for example, Fourth Wing, it's Fourth Wing to me. It's not the Empyrean or whatever it's called. And I actually just listened to another podcast, a book podcast about Onyx Storm, The Betches Talk. Check them out, they're super funny. And I think they talked about the same thing and I related to that so much. And it's the same here, you know. So this is the Book of Azrael series. And now let's dive right in. So I'm not gonna be describing the general synopsis of the book in my own words, simply because I'm afraid that I would spoil you something. So I'm gonna read the blurb on Goodreads, okay? Just for a quick intro. So World Ender meets Ender of Worlds. 1,000 years ago, Diana gave up her life in the deserts of Eoria to save her dying sister. She called upon anyone who would listen, not expecting a monster far worse than any nightmare to answer. Now she does what Caden asks, even if that means securing an ancient relic from the very creatures that hunt her. A king thought, long dead and long forgotten. In the old world, his name was Samkiel. In the new world, it is Liam. But one title remains true throughout time. He is the World Ender, a myth to his enemies, a savior and king to those loyal to him. After the Gods' War, he locked himself away, hiding from the world. He denied his crown and responsibilities, leaving the very ones who needed him most to deal with the fallout of the death of their homeworld. Now an attack on those he holds dear sends him back to the one realm he never wished to visit again, and into the sights of an enemy he thought imprisoned eons ago. Now enemies older than time must put aside their differences and work together in hopes of saving both their world and every realm in between. Okay, so that's the general synopsis. So you can have an idea in your head of what this book is even about if you didn't know or if you have forgotten. And let's set the mood first. So, have you ever read a book that has such morally gray characters? Or, well, their morals are so grayish that you start to question your own morals? Because, you know, let's say that something similar like this happened to me when I was in the head of the main characters. I would say that the vibe is like dark fantasy, there's mythology, power struggles, a lot of chaos, enemies to lovers. It's kind of like a slow burn. The angst is there. Then if you like a really good enemies to lover story in the sense that they're like mortal enemies and the hate is there, it starts that way here. how to say it. It does feel like they literally hate each other, and there's torture involved. I'm not gonna say more than that. So, you know that as soon as there's torture involved, they must be actual enemies. However, you also have to keep in mind that these are like seriously old creatures, okay? I mean, Samkiel, the god, he's older than this universe. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, has that kind of an age. And you can feel the age, by the way. So that's also another thing that I liked. You know, sometimes, I don't know if you've read Akotar or any like Fae kind of books where the Fae are hundreds and hundreds of years old, but when they talk, you don't feel their age. They feel like teenagers sometimes, or just like people in their 20s. They give you that vibe with the way they speak. And here with Samkiel, aka Liam, he has that age. You can feel it in his presence, the way he talks. You know that he's centuries and centuries like old. However, with Diana, that's not the case. So she's younger than Liam. Like, let's remember that. In comparison to Liam, she's literally like a teenager. You know what I mean? But still, she's also very, very old. But with her, you don't get that vibe. She has that kind of a bad bitch energy. So the way she speaks is like a bad bitch in our world. You know what I mean? But you also have to keep in mind that these two characters, they grew up in totally different environments. They weren't even like raised on the same planets. So the culture is different, you know? That's why I did not really hate the fact that Diana is more like a fuck you kind of a person. She swears. She has that kind of a vocabulary, right? And it was fine by me. At the beginning, it did kind of throw me off a little bit. It was too much at the beginning, but I got used to it. So it's that kind of a situation. You get used to it. And if that's something that you're not even bugged by at all, then, you know, there's no problems whatsoever. And as I was saying about the enemies, I feel like they could have lasted longer as strictly enemies, but I still like the progression. It did kind of feel natural to me. They had to work together. They were like this all the time, super close. So it was like enemies, friendship, lovers, you know, and even that doesn't happen straight away. Damn, this is really difficult to talk about without spoilers. Also, another thing I love about it is the found family aspect. Okay, I feel like the found family in this book is familying. Okay, it's really good. And I have to correct myself. It's actually not in this book, it's in the second book. So in the second book, you get even more POVs. It's not just a dual POV, it's a multiple POV. And it's great. I love it. It's not super common. It's not like, you know, there's one character and then the second and the third. No, it's mostly Diana and Liam. But somewhere in between, you also get a third perspective, someone else, you know, completely random. But it really helps you to get to know these characters even more because you get an introduction in the first book. And even that setup is great. You feel like these people are a family, you know? When I read the blurb, you could see that Samkiel, Liam, he abandoned the people he cares for because he was struggling. He had his own personal demons to combat. But eventually when the reunion happens and in his, you know, inner thought process, when he describes these people and what they mean to him, for example, you get that feeling that it's real and that the love is there. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it does happen to me in books that the relationships fall flat. And a good example of this is, don't hate me, but the Empyrean series, meaning Fourth Wing. I don't feel like the found family was familying there, okay? I did not feel that connection as deep. I did not get attached to the characters. I did not feel them the way I felt them, for example, in this series. Okay, but if you liked Fourth Wing and you felt like the connection was there and you felt like the found family was great, then I feel like here you can just step up a notch even more and love them even more. I don't know. Because if you felt like that was happening there and I didn't, then I don't see why you would feel like it's not happening here. Do you know what I mean? So that was amazing. I enjoyed that immensely. Then when it comes to Diana and Liam, it's interesting because she's the one that's morally gray. Usually when I read these fantasy books, the female is usually the one that's kind of like, a saint basically. She's a goody good girl, or maybe not, but she's like morally cleaner, you could say. While here it's the other way around. He's the god, he's the one that has to be selfless and, think of others, like the hero type, while she's the villain type actually. And that's pretty neat. And again, this isn't something that you get that kind of a big feel for in the first book. I mean, you do. She does shit, okay? That makes you question, like, her or whatever. But you never dislike her in that regard. At least I didn't. Because you understand where she's coming from. And, her inner dilemma is described really well. Because you can see that she does kind of fight against what she is. And she does kind of question herself. Her part in the grand scheme of things and what she's doing. And she does have this one person that she loves very, very much, and that keeps her grounded. And when you see those interactions between her and that person that she loves, it's her sister, it's not a spoiler, you kind of see immediately that there's more to Diana, and there's no way that you can hate her. She just does what she does in order to protect the one she loves, and in her mind, that's also the only person that loves her back. So she's kind of a tragic character, also the things she's been through throughout the centuries with this Caden dude, the one she works for. It hasn't been pleasant, so you can't help but sympathize for her. And then on the other side, you have Liam. And basically his world collapsed because of creatures like her. Because of oh my gosh, bear with me. Igmorutans. This is the weirdest name alive. I hate it. But at the same time, it's super mystical. So I'm fine with it. But no. I'm gonna call them bloodsuckers. They're not vampires. Not like that. But let's say bloodsuckers, okay? So he has reason to to hate these creatures, right? They're the cause of why his world fell apart, right? Even if their world didn't fall apart, like they were at war with these creatures for centuries. There's a long history of friction, and he doesn't see them as anything but monsters. Diana and him are enemies in that way, but there's something that happens that forces them to work together. I'm not gonna dive too deep because I personally went into this completely blind. I didn't know what this was about at all. I just put it on my reading list for 2025 because I saw it mentioned a lot of times, and the title kind of hooked me, and also the cover page, like, it hooked me for some reason. I find it with the skull, it seems so dark and mysterious that I was just like, I have to read this, and I just started. But it was a slow start. So another thing, like, I started enjoying this book at around 30% in. Because at the beginning, there's a lot of world building too. So if you're a world building kind of a person, if you dig that, then that's great. There's a lot of world building. You have a lot of different creatures in this book, like vampires, whatever Diana is, witches, werewolves, and some banshees, even some other creatures that I've never heard of that are like basically created specifically for this world. Also, worlds collide. You have different planets, different dimensions, gods, monsters, angels, whatever they are, celestials, like a lot of it. There's a lot. And I feel like it's well written and well developed. And this is actually a debut novel. So that's amazing. I feel like you have to keep that in mind too, if you just think about that fact. So the world building is amazing. I'm more of a character-driven reader, if I'm completely honest. I care more about relations between characters, the characters themselves, their thought process, their issues, their dilemmas, whatever. More about that than world building. So maybe that's why the beginning kind of dragged on for me a little bit. Because I wanted to get to the nitty-gritty of the characters, of the relationships of Diana and Liam, like working together, hating each other, but at the same time trying to kind of communicate and trying to work together, but at the same time also being super distrustful of each other and careful. Because, of course they can't trust each other. And, it's an interesting read in that sense because, like, he knows what he knows. So, Igmorutans, they're bad. They're awful. I hate them. They destroyed my world. But then there's this woman here who has, like, a good sense of humor, who seems to genuinely love her sister, who actually gives some pretty good advice in regards to his nightmares and his own personal trauma, because since they work together, she sees all of that, right? So he's like weirded out by it. Who is this? How is this possible? Why is she like this? Why is she so different? And he's a smart cookie. He can't help but notice that. And, so that's the problem, you could say, with the enemies aspect of it, because as soon as they start working with each other, as soon as, like, when they start spending 24/7 together, when they have to work together in order to achieve a common goal, they have to communicate. And once you start communicating, you see past shit. So you start asking yourself, like, but what if it's different here? But I can see this, but she actually makes me laugh, and no one has done that in like over 100 years. You know what I mean? 100, that's an understatement. 1,000, more like it. So when they're put in that kind of an environment, it would be stupid to be enemies like for the entire book. You know what I mean? So they start off as enemies, but that kind of does melt away a little by little. And I guess that's the way it should be. And I liked it because I felt like their progression in their relationship was really neat and it made sense. And it's also difficult for Liam because he knows the things she's done in the past. She's like a criminal in their world, she has killed and maimed and ravaged, whatever, and yet there's more to her. And from her point of view, she hates celestials and gods because in the Gods' War that was already mentioned in the blurb, like that Gods' War didn't affect just the gods, okay? It affected everyone, and it affected her and her family too, right? And that's why she kind of hates the Celestials, because she has this grudge. And she has also this misconception, maybe because of the fact that she grew up with Caden. He was the one who, like it was said in the blurb. I keep mentioning the blurb because I want you to know that it's there. I'm not spoiling anything. She called upon old spirits, gods, whatever, to help her. And Caden, well, let's just say that he's the dark kind of help. He's the help that you should run away from, not accept. And she lived with him for centuries, and he did kind of brainwash her in regards to that. But that's what I also like about Diana. She also saw right through him. So what necessarily what Caden believes isn't something that she deep down wholeheartedly believes too. And I think that her sister helped with that. She kept her grounded and honest. She was the one that kind of reminded her of what Caden is and who he is. So I feel like that's why Diana isn't that far gone, because of that light in her life. So I just love how everything makes sense. The characters are really deep, I feel like everything has been thought through really well. And that's great. I don't have questions, why that? But why would she think that? But why would she just accept that? No, it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you're human, you can totally understand everything, right? Also, it's not a straight path. So don't expect this to be, oh, so now they work together and they fall in love with each other and then they're like together and they work against everyone bad. No, it's not linear. It's like ups and downs, okay? So that's all I can say about that. And, Diana, like throughout these 2 books that I've read, I just started reading the 3rd one. She makes some messed up decisions. She's super annoying sometimes. So be ready for that. Like the main character, Diana, she can be annoying. Like really, some of her decisions are just like, what the fuck? She's stubborn as fuck. You're just sometimes, girl, wake up. And that can annoy you for sure. But I don't know, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about how old she is, what she's been through, you understand. You can't help but understand where she's coming from somehow. And also, you have to remember her nature, what she's become throughout the years, like this creature, this Igmaruthan, this is like a dark creature. The creature itself, not her, but the creature, the thing that she is, the darkness that lurks in her because she got it from Caden, it's bad. It's dark, it's not light, right? So that kind of also influences her and her decisions and her anger issues. She's literally that type, the selfish kind of character, the character that would kill anyone in order to protect the people she loves without a second thought. And sometimes it can be frustrating because in my head, I'm like, let's say, this is hypothetical, okay, that someone betrays her and then someone that she loves gets hurt and she's like, I will kill you. But that person, for example, betrayed her because they were in a situation in which someone that they loved was also gonna die. So they basically did what she would do, right? And in my head, I'm like, but don't be a hypocrite, like you would do the same thing in order to protect the one you love. Don't be a hypocrite. And yet she's just like, no, you were warned. I am the way I am, and I'm gonna kill you. You know what I mean? So in that case, I'm just like, ugh, come on, like they did what you would do. And she just kills without question, she kills without trying to understand, without trying to see the light or whatever. And that can be frustrating and sad, but that's just the way she is, and she never lies about it, It's like what you see is what you get with her, and I appreciate that. But yeah, just be warned that she can become frustrating, like really frustrating at times, and you might like want to strangle her. And then on the other hand, you have Samkiel, you have Liam, who kind of has seen the good parts of her, and he just cares for her regardless, and he wants to help her be the good person that she is. So to focus more on the better parts instead of the bad parts. Because yeah, whether you like it or not, both are there, but which one is stronger, you could say. And he kind of tries to help her in that way. And it's just an interesting relationship. Also, I feel like the pacing is really good. The book is really long. Both books are really long. I'm reading it on my Kindle, so when my Kindle calculates how long of a read this is, it's like 16 hours. So I think that's like around 700 pages. So that's really, really long. But honestly, when I like a story, when I like the characters, I want to spend as much time with them as possible, right? So I don't mind the fact that these books are this long. And honestly, there's always something going on, I feel like, at least. The plot keeps moving. There's like battles, there's power struggles. There's always something going on. And if not, like they have deep conversations that help them get to know each other, and they help us get to know them. And I like that. But if you have trouble with that, if you don't like that, if you always want just action-packed, world-building, plot things going on, and like I said, there's a lot of that, but we also have to focus on the characters. So there's a balance, and I like the balance. To me, it made sense. However, the writing, there's some repetitions, okay? Like, how many times do I have to hear that this person is your world? You know what I mean? That kind of a thing. So maybe in that sense, it could have been shorter, because we've heard a lot of stuff already, and it's fine if it's repeated sometimes, because sometimes it has to be so that the statement really sticks. But sometimes it's just too much and unnecessary, and sometimes it felt like that here. So the writing could be improved maybe a little bit, like edited a little bit better, I could say, And in that case, maybe the book would have been shorter. So that might be a gripe I have with the book. And another gripe that I might have is that I think this is an unpopular opinion. Because when I notice people, like their responses and reviews on books, they really love it. At least this is my personal experience with what I've seen online. People like love in the sense that the more lovey-dovey the main characters are, the better. If the guy repeats that he would burn the whole world down to the ground for this woman, if he repeats that a dozen times, it's still not enough. Like, he should say it a dozen times more. You know what I mean? But I'm not like that. I love that at the beginning, and sometimes, of course, during the relationship too. But I feel like it can get too much real fast for me. Even the spicy scenes, I don't want it to be repeated so many times that they love each other during the act, right? So that's my fear when it comes to them. They're those types of characters that are just gonna keep repeating the love they feel for each other and how amazing the other one is. He was there for me when I needed him. She brought the best out of me. She reminded me of who I am. I would burn the world down for her, and I love her. And then they would have sex, and he would be like, I love you so much. And, the cute but kind of makes me want to vomit nicknames. I'm not into that, okay? Look, I'm romantic. I'm a romantic person, okay? Don't get me wrong. I love romance. I love those small, cute acts that the guy or the girl makes for the other one. I love all of that. But there has to be a balance, and there has to be angst. I don't want them to come to a point where they're together and there's no angst. Now they're just like all lovey-dovey and everything's good in the world, like in regards to their relationship. I don't want it to be like that. And that's what freaks me out about this book series, actually. And if there's gonna be 7 books of this, I don't think I'm gonna be able to handle that much lovey-doveyness, But that's a personal gripe, that's something that I just don't like in books. For example, I keep referencing Akatar and Onyx Storm, Onyx Storm Fourth Wing, but these are like super popular books, so I know that maybe if you're into fantasy, you might have read them. But that's something that I hated about Rysand, and Farah. They just became so lovey-dovey. It just, oh my gosh, made me want to vomit. I did not enjoy their relationship anymore at all. So that's what I'm worried about here, that it's the same kind of a thing, the same vibe. So yeah, that. Okay, and another thing. Do you know Throne of Glass? Like the series by Sarah J. Maas? I'm not gonna spoil anything, but in Throne of Glass, whether you like it or not, she did, Sarah, like a really cool thing for me when she brought in a completely random character that we've never heard of before. She brought her in with her own POV. So this is how this character was introduced to us. Like, there was a chapter, her name was on the top, and dive in. And I was so annoyed by that at first. I was just like, why do I need this shit in my life? You know, like, I want to focus on the main characters, the ones that I know and love, and that's it. But I ended up loving it. That ended up being my actually favorite storyline. And also because the character was just so morally gray, like insane. Similar to Diana, actually. And here, something similar happens. You don't get to introduce to completely new character. You know of this character, but what you know of them is very one-sided. It's from Diana's and Sam Keel's, Liam's point of view. You're not in their head, right? And I love the fact that she did that. Eventually, you get in their head and you see that there's more there, and that hooks you, and it's a really good villain thing, okay? Like, the character is a villain. And I love me a good villain, okay? I live for the villains. I actually usually prefer the villain storylines in books and not the hero ones, because heroes get annoying very fast for me. Like I said, because they just get so either lovey-dovey or just angelic in the sense that it's not realistic, you know? I feel like villains are more realistic. They're more morally gray and they're more human, you could say. I don't know, I just like that more. And I like the fact that she did that here, because even if I'm annoyed by that storyline and if it's too much for me, I still have that one to kind of fall back on. And also the other ones, because like I said, you get multiple POVs eventually. So that was a really good thing. And I feel like the author knows what she's doing. She's like, just being in Liam's and Diana's head all the time, that will get tiring real fast. So she's giving us a taste of other POVs, and I love that so much. And you know, I wish that was also done in Onyx Storm, but I explained that in my Onyx Storm episode if you wanna hear more about me ranting about that. With the multiple POVs and the found family, it kind of reminds me of Throne of Glass, because I love the found family aspect there as well. And also the multiple POVs were done really well, because once they kind of all came together, it just made sense and it was so good. And I feel like the same can be said for this book series. Also, this is an urban fantasy, so cell phones are a thing, for example, and in that way it kind of reminds you of Crescent City, and that's the only thing, just like urban fantasy vibe, which is rare. You know, fantasies usually, they do happen in those like historical corset kind of settings. And then maybe like Crowns of Nyaxia, if you know of that one, by Carissa Broadbent. It's like dark like that, you know. In Crowns of Nyaxia, you also have these like vampires, a really morally gray villain that I love. It's dark, and I feel like the vibe is similar here in that sense too, like the darkness and the creatures and stuff like that. If you like your fantasy darkish and morally gray characters, I think you'll enjoy this. Just be ready for a slow start. This is my personal experience, so be ready for that. And it's long, but I don't know, I read it super fast. You know, if you like a book, it's never too long. You know what I mean? However, if you don't like it, of course you're gonna be like, what the fuck is this? Why is this so long? This could have been so much shorter. But if you enjoy the characters, if you enjoy the plot, you want more and more. You don't want it to be shorter. You actually want it to last forever, right? So that just depends. Now I want to read a few quotes that I like from the book, but they're not spoilery, so it's nothing like that. Just general good quotes that I really love. So I really love this. I do not remember how long it took me or if we continued to talk, but sleep came and the nightmares did not. So amazing. There's also a really good healing journey in this book, I feel like. In this book series, you know, both of these main characters, they've gone through a lot and they have to heal and they have to deal with it and accept what happened and not shut it out and run away from it. And they help each other do that. And I really love that. I decided then and there that this woman should never beg. I understood she cared for her sister, but who cared for her? Just another insight into the book, because Diana really is like a tragic character. It does feel like she's just so alone sometimes, and like she has no one but her sister, and that's just sad, isn't it? How can you not feel for her? I didn't remember how long we talked, but somewhere amidst her laughter and smiles, I decided I would rip the world apart for her. So this is the ripping the world apart for her that we talked about. And like I said, I am a romantic, okay? So I love these kinds of statements in a balanced amount. Not too much. I love that they're there. So this is, for example, a quote that I'm obsessed with, because I feel like this is one of the first times that he thought about her like that. And you know, of course, that beginning when the characters start to change their minds about each other, we live for that, right? That's great. That's why I love enemies to lovers. Also, these quotes, reading them reminded me of another thing. There's also humor in these books. You know, Diana, she's super funny. He's funny because he's this god that now is surrounded by these mortals and in a world that speaks so differently than him. You know, he comes to, let's say, Earth. It's not Earth, but you can imagine it as Earth. He comes to Earth and, you know, he hears the word fuck for the first time. And he's like, what the fuck is fuck? You know, what does that mean? So, you know, it's cute and it's funny in that kind of a way because he's just so disconnected from everything. And I love that. It makes it funny. It's like a comedy, you know, and he doesn't know what a photo booth is and how it works and, you know, what a car is. And he just kind of calls it like a weird square with wheels. I mean, he's just so confused about everything. And I feel like that's really well done. And you also have like these other side characters in the books. Some of them are part of the found family, others are not, and they're also super funny. The comments they make, the gestures, it's hilarious sometimes. I laughed a lot. And also Liam, he has a mouth on him, so if you're into dirty talk, this has it. But at the same time, the first book is not spicy at all. You have to be prepared for that. It's not spicy. The spice spices up eventually because this is a long series, but I like it like that. It's a proper slow burn. I actually don't want them to be, I don't know how spicy already in the first book, even if it's super long. And also, like I said, I love angst. You know, I love the push and pull. Amazing. If it would have lasted for 3 books, I would be into it, if I'm completely honest. So yeah. And also another thing about me, fun fact, I love spice. Okay, I love a good spicy scene, but there has to be a balance between spice, character developments, and plot. If there's just spice on spice on spice for the sake of it, that gets icky and it gets tiring, okay? Because there needs to be more to the relationship. There needs to be deep conversations and shit has to be happening in the world surrounding them. You know, if there's just spice, I'm not into it. And another quote that proves that I am a romantic, okay, if you have ever doubted that. I also think that sometimes 2 people can love each other so very much that not even death can separate them. I feel like that's beautiful and I want to believe that. Okay, so I'm a romantic. Also, another character that I love in this book, you know when I mentioned that this has humor in it? Well, my favorite is probably Cameron, okay? You'll get to him eventually. Cameron is a joy. Okay, everything he says, everything he does, even the way he looks, you know? Sometimes he'll give Diana a look that will speak more than words ever could, you know? And the way she deciphers it is hilarious. And Cameron is amazing. Okay, Cameron is great. We also get his perspective and I want more of him. And he's also a hunk, so of course. Yeah. Oh, this one's a really good one. Some things you must endure yourself. Some things are meant to happen. You see death and assume it is against you, but that is natural. It is not cruel or kind. Death takes no sides. Death does not discriminate or hate. It just is and has remained since the first living being existed and will be here long after. It may hurt, but it happens to all. This book also makes you think, it makes you feel. You know, I rated like the first book. I gave it a 4-star. Just because I felt like it could have made me even more emotional. I'm not saying I enjoy crying when I read, but I don't know, for some reason I am a crier. I cry very easily. That's the thing with me. But in the first book I kind of didn't, and I expected that I would. But then the second book picks off right where we left off the first one and I immediately cry. So you can't just think about it as one book. You really have to think of it as a story, as a long story. And I feel like this author, she thought it through really well in that way. So I trust her that she's gonna do a good job with the entire series, like, hopefully. And then the second one, I rated a 4.5. And it would have been a 5 if the writing wasn't like as repetitive sometimes, like I said, and for another reason too, but I can't tell you that. So, you'll have to read it. Oh, and a final thought that oh my gosh. So this is a thing that I just dislike about books in general, in fantasy books. I hate the fated mate trope. I hate it. I don't like fated mates. I want people to choose other people just because, okay? Because they fall in love with them regardless of their surroundings, because it just happens, they can't help themselves because that person is so intriguing or so beautiful or whatever, not because it's written in the stars. I feel like fated mates sounds romantic and, it's written in the stars. That sounds beautiful. But once you start thinking about it, like when you get into it deeper, it's not romantic because it feels like your choice was taken away. Like no matter what you have done, no matter what they have done, who they are, you would still fall for them because it is destined to happen. It doesn't feel like it's your choice. You are drawn to that person by forces beyond yourself. Do you get my meaning here? It's not your choice. It's not something that happens because of how you feel. Like, yeah, the feelings are there, but are they really yours? Or are they there because you were destined to be together all along and it's something inevitable? You question everything. What is real? What is not real? Like, if I were put in that position and if I would realize I have a fated soulmate, an amata, it's called an amata in this book, I would literally question everything. Like, I would start thinking about who I am and what I am and how I think and what my morals are, where I stand in this world. And just based on all that, is this someone that I would still choose if they weren't my soulmate? Because it is destined in the stars and because there's like a supernatural pull involved. It's not natural, it's supernatural. So I don't like that idea. And yeah, this book, like I've said, they have amatas. Amata is a soulmate, mate, essentially. Okay, I'm not into it. I'm not into it. Yeah, so I wish that wasn't the case. Like, I wish that these characters in these books that I've read, like, all of these books, fantasy books, like not all, but a lot of them have mates. And I just wish that a character would just fall in love with a person because they helped them go through the worst time of their life and they were there for them and, they bonded and they had like those deep conversations that went on and on into the night and they got to know each other and understand each other and the chemistry was there, the sexual attraction, like the whole combination was there, and that's why they fell in love. And it was of their own choosing, of the circumstances that they were put in, instead of some cosmic thing that made them come together and fall in love with each other. Like, that's how I see it. If you disagree, if you have a different perspective on this, a different opinion, I would love to hear it. But that's just my take on it. Okay, so yeah, that's that actually. That's it for this book discussion. I feel like I've been all over the place. Hopefully you don't mind. But, I meant this to be like a chat between friends, So if you've read it already, tell me if you've loved it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, like let me know. And if not, let me know if this does sound like your thing, if you are planning on reading it, or if I've actually convinced you to not read it. Just let's talk about it. I want to hear more. And yeah, that's it for this episode. Let me know if you would want me to dive deeper into these books, if you want me to do a deep dive, maybe at least like for the third book or for the fourth one that's coming out in August, whatever, let me know because I enjoy talking about this. I really do. And yeah, that's it for today. I'm not sure which episode I'm gonna do next for next week. I might be doing the Bridge Kingdom series, and it's gonna be like a spoilery, I feel like, discussion. Or I'll see. Maybe I might actually do a spoiler-free one. Let me know if you have an opinion about that. But I've read all 4 of the Bridge Kingdom series like books. There's 4 books, 2 duologies. Okay, so the first 2 books are a duology and the second 2 books are a duology, and we're getting 2 more, and they're also obviously going to be a duology. So I feel like it's written really well. I'm not going to dive into that now, but I enjoy that series a lot, a lot, a lot. It was so interesting and different and refreshing. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. If you can, if you like the discussion, or if you enjoy my podcast in general, please rate me. Take the time to rate me wherever you're listening. Comment, subscribe, of course. This helps with other people finding me and reaching out and just building a community. I'm also on TikTok and on Instagram, so you can follow along there. I post some relatable, fun book memes, content. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thank you guys for listening again, and see you next week. Bye!